Howdy, all of you delicious people. I am here today to review Day of the Dead, episode 7. If you didn't know, if you weren't aware. So going into this episode, one thing that I was aware of is the hefty amount of dialogue that was to be presented in this show. I was like, man, they're getting a lot of stuff done that I don't give a about still. Thank God for all this dialogue I could care less about. When are we gonna go to the shoosting of the zombies and the people dying and the wee? Like, they do realize that there's possibly like 3 episodes left. Like, man, are we like, what are we gonna do for the next like couple of episodes? Like, they're gonna really have to just have like a whole entire episode that just focuses on like 1 or 2 stories or something. They're like, I don't know how they're gonna like break all this down for the last few episodes they have here. Even if I really want to just like, man, I just want to know how this ends. I'm so interested. I'm so intrigued. Not really. The thing that I guess I wanted at the end of this episode, or at just this episode, technically happened, but like the way we went about it beforehand was just like, you had to put this connected to all this crap that I really, like, we have a bunch of like weird closure like things going on in this episode. Like, I think if they were to title this anything, they should have called this like a closure kind of episode. I don't know, they should have called it that. So for this episode, we seem to have Lauren, who we kind of have to be on this kind of red alert about, or kind of like, I guess you like probably would have to say like yellow alert. Like, you're having caution around this character because we are not really sure if she's going to be a zombie or a serial killer. So watch the episode just to see what the heck is going on weirdly with Lauren in this episode. But then also, the thing that I had possibly made a joke about in another episode, I think is bizarrely probably going to happen. Because this episode could quite possibly cement that. Something that I joked around about may possibly be a thing in our lives through this episode. Weird, right? So here's also the thing that I want to get out of here when we have this kind of cryptic like sense thing. So Blackwood is to kind of be separated from everyone else and is to have like her own story with her granny that comes off like, I don't want to say racist, but then I would also have to say, well, racist, because what else could I really say? That, like, man, like, this story is to, like, it feels like a Thanksgiving kind of story, but it's also something that I didn't exactly want to hear, but because it combines with the fact of something that I wanted to actually have some real meaning to, means nothing. I'm like, great, what a waste of time that whole thing was. I thought that there would have been some hidden meaning in this thing, but no. Why? Why would, like, plus, also we have, like, a weird Looney Tunes, like, moment between Rhodes and McDermott, where it's like, where we, of course, have Rhodes, who is to just be like all like, yeah, like, I'm gonna take you out, McDermott. We have found out that zombies are possibly smarter than the people in this cast, the people in this show, people maybe writing this story. I don't know. No offense to the writers, but also offense to the writers. I double negatived it. So, So yeah, really the one thing that I want to figure out at the tail end, the big event that happens at the tail end of this episode, I really want to figure out where the heck was Herb during the end of this episode. Because it seems like him and Lauren had this little story, but I was kind of wondering where was Herb at the end of this episode. Because maybe he would have had some kind of like, "Brr, brr, brr, brr," or something. I don't know. So we basically have pretty much no zombies in this episode whatsoever. There's no hint of zombie. There may be a zombie in a bag situation, but there are basically no zombies in this episode. People can debate that with me because they see the very tail end of this episode and be like, well, wait, like, did you not watch the whole? I saw credits. Like, I went to credits and saw, but I'm like, but there's still technically no zombies in that. It's basically like the Dawn of the Dead situation where, like, the guys are on the roof and they're kind of going and playing that silly game where they're like shooting Burt Reynolds and Rosie O'Donnell, and they're just kind of like hoping that a zombie is gonna like break into their mall so they can have something to do. Like, it's kind of like that at the tail end of this episode, because I'm trying to cryptically, mysteriously spell this out to people. So with that said, I think that that's all possibly that I want to talk about this episode 4 in the cryptic-like sense, because, so, what would my grading system be upon this episode? Well, if I were to have all the praise in the world of the last week's episode, now we just turn around and just like, why did I even say anything? Why did I even pat these people on the back? Because we know we're going to turn around and waste so much time here. You writers and people working on the show, because you made me feel like there's potential here. You only have a number of episodes left, so there should be putting out something good, right? Man, was I wrong. Man, was I wrong. Just, like, give me one episode that I can be like, oh yeah, like, I guess, like, they're just trying to push people, like, if you fell off the wagon, here's one episode, like, we'll feed you something. But then we're just going to pull it right away from you again. Just to probably turn around and in the very last episode. Because for some goofy thought process, was to say, like, from a long stretch of time ago, that I think that they are just building to something. And if this episode doesn't showcase that, with the rando police officer zombie that looks familiar, let's just say, if they're not really just building up or teasing to a moment, like, now we can certify and guarantee that they're building up to something that I've complained too often about, hence why I'm not re-saying it now. They're just building it up to the very last freaking thing of episode. I'm wondering if there is going to possibly justifyingly be a season 2 for this show. Could it just be a thing that is popular enough to justify its renewal? Like, obviously Chucky's getting renewed, like, that's a no-brainer. But is Day of the Dead to be trending enough to garner its season 2 renewal? Is it going to be like a Batwoman scenario where season 2 wasn't good at all, or season 1 wasn't good at all, but like they just keep on just putting the show out regardless of how severely low the ratings go? I don't know. We'll figure that out. So let's go into that double five, because it's otherwise that time yet again to go into spoiler time. Spoiler time. It's about the time we get to spoil this episode. So I'm gonna have to do this in like once we get to like the dialogue crap. Like I'm gonna have to just go and just kind of go in a lot of directions and places because whatever kind of pops into my brain first is gonna be the thing I talk about. So, beginning of episode is to go on and continue from the last episode, where Trey is to be, I'm dead. I'm dead still. So they go and they go and they take Trey's body and they wrap it up in some like blanket or towelette, and so they ceremoniously like really give this character a really good send off by just dumping him into some dumpster and just lighting him on fire. And so Luke is to be like, wait a minute, like, don't burn him in this fire. We don't even know if, like, he's gonna even turn. Like, we can just bury him into a grave and, you know, like, he won't be a zombie. We don't know how, if this is to perfectly work out. Because, yeah, you guys have been in this world for 7 episodes now, and you still have no clue how anything works because you guys have never spelled this out to anybody. So many people have questions. Obviously, there's people that do have questions, even to the point of people having consistent concerns of the characters being dumb in this show. And I have to just point out that McDermott outsmarting Rhodes makes that point for me. That even zombies are smarter than the human characters in this show. And so now, like, I'm back to almost wanting to just say the people in this town are not quite all that intelligent, let's just say. Even Dr. Logan, who now in IMDb is to be called Dr. Logan because she needs to have street cred. The world is to now be a tub of toilet crap. And we need to have a name of Dr. Logan now. From Logan to Dr. Whatever. Anyways, so they go on and they torch Trey's body because Paul is like, we need to be sure that Trey does not come back and murder us in our sleep. So they go and they flame him on and burn the ashes. And so Bobby ends up just coming on in and is to bring like some remains of some other zombie, and he tosses it into the dumpster also. And he's like, sorry, kid. And so he walks off. And I'm like, man, you not only desecrate this body, but then you just, like, basically Trey is the morning trash. Like, well, like, when you really look at this character overall, you could probably have that real thinking of it. But, like, he had a good, like, you just desecrated that whole good thing that he had in the last episode by chucking him in this dumpster, treating him like he's the Sunday trash, basically. Because everything else is just getting dumped in there because you might as well just put more zombies in the flames, so to speak. So Cam is trying to comfort Luke, and like we have Cam who's to probably say that he's kind of in the same boat as Luke. And Luke is to mention it's like, well, like, I really want to take back the last thing that I ever said to my dad. Like, And so, really, Cam is trying to, like, be Luke's shoulder to cry on. And Luke doesn't really want that. And so, Luke is to go and pout off. And so, Cam goes and asks Lauren later, after she's busy going and putting scissors to people's throats. Cam just asks Lauren, it's like, well, do I put off this kind of vibe of, like, ticking people off kind of thing. Like, do I have this like thing that like people just see this like mug and they're like, I am just wanting to put a hole through that face. And so Lauren is to tell him, it's like, oh no, like that's not really you. It's just everybody just has like just grieves in a different way, or just needs some people to lean on, and so on and so forth. Like Lauren is to have or Cam is to have Lauren to lean on, as she may be slowly but surely be weirding out, because what ends up happening to Lauren is to have her hands just kind of doing some weird, goofy stuff here. And I'm like, what is she gonna be, like a Teen Wolf sometime soon? Is she gonna be Michael J. Foxing it sometime soon, or she's gonna have these like big, massive claws or something come out? So Lauren is going to the bathroom or going to this sink and washing her hands, and her hands are kind of doing something weird, like she has some idle hand stuff. Or why not just chop off her hand then? Because if she's worried about killing people, because Lauren is to go off to Herb, and so now Herb is to show Lauren his cut, and so Lauren is like, well, hey, like I can go and get Fisher, and he'll sew you up, and Herb is like, no, I don't want Fisher to see this. Why? Because it'll make you look weak in front of him? Like, dude, he's gonna marry your daughter whether you want to or not, so cue up the end of this episode. So Lauren is to go and sew up Herb, and so we still have Herb continuing to want to just talk about that whole like drug situation, about the whole filling the prescription thing, and I'm like, God, are we still on that? Like, do we have nothing between these characters besides that? I'm like, good God. But like Herb is like, well, hey, maybe I can help you with that situation because the world is ending anyways. So Lauren is like, no, like I've grown from that, or I've like, but wait a minute. Here's the thing. Where were those drugs? She had like 4 whole pills and some things somewhere. Where are those drugs now? Where are they? I want to know where they are. Because if Lauren is popping them, making it seem like she's like not falling off the wagon, is all of a sudden we're going to turn around and find out that Lauren did take those drugs, and we're thinking that she's still a good girl and whatever, but we're going to find out like she had fallen back off the wagon and taken those drugs and is going to like OD from them, and that's how she turns maybe to a zombie. So weirdly, while Lauren is sewing Herb up, all of a sudden there's this moment that I think that like Herb is to, I think, pass out or something. And so Lauren is to weirdly have these scissors and is to be at the throat of Herb, like going and killing him. And then she doesn't go through with it. I'm like, good for Lauren. Like, she could have sliced this guy and murdered him, but she decided not to. Because what does it matter, right? Everyone will eventually just turn into a zombie regardless. She could just write it off as like, oh, a zombie came in and murdered him. Because why not? So, but then Lauren goes off to be talking to her hand. And then Cam comes in, and that's when they have the dialogue between one another about the whole, like Cam going like, oh, am I just a guy that is to just be this like person everyone hates or what? So now what would be next on the hit list here? Let's go with the Luke situation. So Luke is to go on and talk to his mother because Paula and Pops are to seemingly have a agreement that like Pops is kind of on Paula's side, and everything that she's gonna say is to go here because Pops evidently was wrong in the last episode, so he now has to go and find somebody who's right, and that's only to be Paula. So the world's ending. Who gives about who's right and who's wrong? You could die tomorrow. So Luke is to take Paula and take her aside, and is to just kind of like Luke is to chew his mother out, and is to mention that, man, like, I wish my dad was still alive, because like it's not his fault that he like went off and tried to sleep with Nicole, because you didn't make him out to be like a good dad or even desirable or whatever. So he went off and slept with some other woman, and Paul was like, "What?" And so Luke was like, "Oh, I thought you knew about like Dad having an affair with Nicole, because he told me about it." And so Luke was to have this all being a build-up thing of Luke confessing that he wanted his father to still be alive, to confess to his dad that he in fact is gay. Immediately my mind is to go into the whole like writing part of it, instead of like the nicety that we seem to have, like a character that is to confess this. Like, I'm immediately coming into the mind of just like, so we really just have to have like characters being presented here, and like anyways, like I don't know how to like tiptoe my way through that. So I'm not going to go further into that, but like in my mind I'm just like, we just have to have a diverse cast in this show. But like, I like the fact that they are like revealing things about characters. I like that. But like, I'm also just like, why did we have to wait like 7 episodes in for this? I don't know. So like, I guess because they really needed a lot in one episode, and I don't know, they just needed a lot to reveal in one episode, I guess, because this is the closure or revealing episode of things, to just kind of like whatever. So so let's go and let's talk about Blackwood. So Blackwood is going off to see her granny because she isn't going to go to her granny's house and just be like, hey, let's go to a safer location than obviously this place. No, Blackwood is to go to her mother's home, or her granny's home, and her granny's like, hey, like, you break into this house. And so it's Blackwood who's like, oh, like, you left your door open, and she falls over. Frickin'. So Blackwood is to go and show this mask to her granny to find out the origin story of the wooden mask. I'm like, yeah, I want this origin story. I want to know what this is. I want this mask to have some kind of important property thing, whatever. And so Granny is to say, it's like, well, the whole thing of this was to tie into basically a Thanksgiving-like story where the Native Americans were to, of course, be in North America, and so Columbus and his folk were to come in here to all of a sudden have it be that there was some other entity that had come on in to be this zombie-ish, monsterish, characterish thing, that they decided that they tried everything to try and get rid of it, and they couldn't figure out a way to get rid of it. So they decided to just bury it under a cave and put that mask on it to make everyone aware during that time period that this was to be some kind of monster to not be dealt with. And so they never decided to just like figure out a way to destroy it. They're just like, well, hopefully this thing never gets loose. Cause like, man, they didn't have much of like creativity as far as like locking anybody up or having the ability to just like kind of take care of something. So they could have just burned it to a stake like the Salem trials, but whatever. I guess they just didn't want it to get out or whatever. So, so we get this story, and so we just consistently have like Granny going on and on about like how like her people weren't treated all that well and all this kind of stuff, and I'm like, wow, that's uh like I myself, I will say it, like I myself am like a fraction Native American. Like, hey man, like please nobody hate on this episode because I'm saying what happens in the episode, and plus also I just so happen to have a certain kind of skin tone also. So, but like I was just like, wow, like what a piece of work that is probably going to be nothing in the next episode. So basically, Granny is telling Blackwood, because they're around this fire, to go and toss this mask into the fire because it means nothing. And so weirdly, we just have Blackwood just continuously looking at this mask, just going like, huh, what am I going to do with this? Ugh. Like, come on! Put the mask on, see what it does. If it does nothing, then problem solved. But I'm just so, like, you have that whole story, and maybe Granny doesn't know about this mask, and she's just telling her daughter that so she won't put it on, and just, hey, throw this thing in the fire. You won't turn into Jim Carrey at any point in this show. Put the mask in the fire. I'm wondering if there is some whole different story about this mask, and Granny doesn't know her. So that's what I'm hoping. And then Blackwood is to come back to her Granny and be like, hey, Granny, you were wrong. You lied. Boo-hoo for you. So let's go on to the McDermott Rhodes story. So McDermott is to go on and is to try to figure out a way out of this cage that he's in. And all he needs to do is take his whole finger and put it into the one part where the screw is to be at one part of the cage, lift that screw up with his finger, and then McDermott ends up getting his finger kind of locked, like just basically broken off into this cage. So McDermott is having difficulties getting out of this cage because now his finger is like kind of put into that area. I'm like, dude, this guy's losing all kinds of fingers. By the time that this show is ending, he's gonna have like, he's gonna be nubbed. He's gonna freaking have nothing, not even a thumb on his bate. So McDermott is now in this cage. So Rhodes comes in and is like, okay, here is my time. Now that I can't do anything with Blackwood because like she has her own separate story, and I just dare say don't want to get tripped with any shoelaces again. I might as well now have to deal with a zombie who I think I can finally figure out some character that I can finally outsmart here. And so, McDermott, I'm going to go and kill you because now it's your time, buddy. And so there is no way that you're going to get easily out of this cage. There's no possible way for that because I and a number of people have built this cage ourselves. And then we just have McDermott kind of just rattling this cage. The finger falls out. McDermott opens his cage and he's like, and Rhodes is just like egg on his face. He's like, well, I'm just gonna like, you know what time it is? I think the game is on. Is a game on? I think a game is on right now. I think I'd better leave. So now, and like Rhodes tries to go for a gun, McDermott's like, nah, gun, yeah. And so Rhodes is like, well, I guess I'm not gonna have a gun here. I'm gonna go and leave. So all of a sudden, Rhodes is to go on and find these two like SWAT like military guys, and I'm like, where were you guys like a minute ago? So Rhodes is to weirdly have this gun exchange with this guy, where Rhodes is just to steal this guy's gun and tell him to get his own. And you know what? If I would have been this one guy, to be like, you go get your own freaking gun, you lazy piece of And so the other SWAT guy gets his gun, and they're like, okay, where is this McDermott fool that I'm sure we're going to easily just kill, right? Because if anything, a previous episode somewhere in the deep down would tell us that these soldiers are just going to straight up get wiped out here. So we have like the Godzilla way of doing things where monster ends up coming in and like we just have characters who just light up bullets consistently with this character thinking that, oh, this is going to work this time around, right? If it hasn't worked 5,000 times, it just coincidentally is going to work this time, right? No, we are to be wrong. And so McDermott ends up killing both of these SWAT guys fairly easily and maybe even off camera. And so let's just push on to something else in this show, because whatever. So I think the only thing left to cover here, because if I didn't cover the Lauren and Cam situation, I think I covered that. So let's cover the Fisher and Amy situation, because that kind of wraps up the rest of this episode. So, and let's finish up this quickly. So, Fisher and Amy are talking it out, and Fisher's like, well, I think that sign of us not being able to get married because of the zombie apocalypse is an actual sign that maybe we shouldn't get married. Maybe, like, you should have gone and been with Sean because your father would have accepted that. And so Amy's like, well, like, I didn't want Sean, I wanted you. And so Fisher is just like, well, you really need to figure out, like, what you, like, absolutely want. And, like, if you want us to get married, if you, like, what do you want? If you want us to break up, like, like, you have to say now, pretty much, like, what you want. And so Amy is to say, like, well, like, as soon as we get out of here, like, and as soon as we can, we're gonna get married. And so Fisher is to go off and find this, like, quarter, like, little candy machine that is to have some ring in it. So, like, both of them can kind of just cement their love, even though it's kind of pretty much cheaply put together and done here. And so Fisher is, once he is to accidentally break this little candy machine, Bobby is to say, it's like, well, hey, man, like, you didn't put a quarter in that thing. It's like, well, the thing broke. like the thing wasn't working. And so he accidentally had this machine tip over, and so he just got the ring he wanted. So Fisher is to mention all about marriage, and coincidentally, the mayor is there. Paula's the mayor, right? So, because it doesn't really matter. So, world ended. So, Paula's to say it's like, well, I think that I can like figure out what I can do here. I'm like, oh my god. So when that happens, I was like, God, they ended this on a thing that I wanted, but there's so much crap that happened before that that was just so ugh. We also had Paula who was to tell Bobby to go outside and kind of check for zombies to be coming their way because they've just conveniently just been going off and doing some Black Friday shopping or had been eating a lot of Thanksgiving meals and so on and so forth. The zombies are very, very busy. Like, do not bother them. They had to go and get some doorbusters. They had to go on and try to, like, really get some really good deals. Hence why they were too busy being anywhere possible in this episode. And then when they were like, oh yeah, like, we gotta come back. Like, hey man, we're full on turkey, man. That was so great. And then, like, we had to go and we had to buy a Nintendo Wii, because that's, I don't think, even a thing anymore, really. We had to go and buy whatever the newest, latest thing is now, like a PS5? Is that the latest thing? Sure, I don't care. Like, I'm not in that bubble anymore of what is the latest thing. So I guess PS5 would probably have to be the latest thing. Sure. So I'm not in that bubble anymore, and I'm happy about it. So, because if I were to be in that bubble, it'd be like, oh, this is the popular thing now. Like, great, whatever. So now we have it where Paula is to have this marriage ceremony, but she ends up making it about herself and her relationship with Trey. And I'm wondering how that's going to work its way into other episodes, where we're going to just have Paula reflecting on the relationship with her and Trey, because I feel that's going to consistently come up some way or another. We have Pops in the early part of the episode that was to tell Paula, like, that he's going to keep a secret about some character named Logan. So I'm like, wait a minute, is Luke Logan's mother? Like, biological mother? Is Dr. Logan Luke's mother? And are we going to find that out by another episode? Because why? Because there's only one Logan in this world. Unless there's some random guy, like, is, like, Wolverine going to come in here like, hey, Bob, I'm going to kill a bunch of zombies. Bub. Like, what other Logan is there in the show? So, what if we find out that Paula had some affair with, like, some young thing, and, like, that guy was named Logan? That would be a funny story to just put in the show. Because you might as well go in a comedic route now or something. Because Trey is not actually Luke's father, so I'm wondering if that's going to come up sometime soon. So, because, yeah, like, maybe Pops is to say that, because we had it to where Paula was to say that Luke isn't the father, but maybe it's the exact opposite. Maybe Luke isn't actually Paula's mother is the real reveal. Instead of Trey not being the father, but like Trey just being like, maybe neither one of them are the actual, like, maybe they just adopted Luke. Maybe we're gonna find out, like, kid, you're so difficult, you're freaking adopted, shut the F up. Maybe that'll be it. So let's wrap this up. So wedding happens and tra-la-la-la-la, everyone's happy because marriage. We have weirdly just Cam having these shorts that are just to be like this Swiss Army knife of things into them. And I wonder if they're gonna just make a joke out of that because he had this beer. He had this beer in his pocket. Now he has tissues, and now he just has like pants. Has cargo shorts just filled with everything, I guess. So Bobby is to see that there's zombies coming to the store, and that's how the show ends. So that's how I'll end this. So I'm gonna get out of here. Bye, everybody. Bye, everybody.